The alarm came at 0300 hours, pulling Captain Park Deho from a dreamless sleep. He was on his feet before his eyes fully opened, years of military training moving his body while his mind caught up. The emergency lights painted his quarters an angry red. "Report," he said into the CUM unit on his wrist. "Sir, we have unknown vessels entering the system. 17 ships. They're not responding to hails." The voice belonged to Lieutenant Choi Minho, his tactical officer. The young man sounded calm, but Deho could hear the tension beneath. "On my way." New Bizen was a quiet colony. 40,000 people living on a green world in the outer rim, growing food for a dozen other human settlements. They had a small Defense Fleet 5 patrol ships and Deho's command vessel, the HFY. Nothing that could stand against 17 unknown warships. When Deho reached the bridge, the main screen showed the approaching fleet. The ships were massive, their design unlike anything in Terran databases. They moved in perfect formation like a single organism with many parts. "Any response to our hails?" Deho asked. Minho shook his head. "Nothing, sir. But they've scanned us. Multiple times." Dr. Kim Yuna arrived moments later, still pulling on her jacket. She was the colony's xenobiologist and first contact specialist, though until now, her job had been purely theoretical. Humanity had found ruins of dead civilizations, but never a living one. "Put me on all frequencies," Yuna said. She took a deep breath and spoke clearly. "Unknown vessels, this is Dr. Kim Yuna of the United Terran Federation Colony New Bizen. We greet you in peace and wish to establish communication. Please respond." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the main screen flickered, and a face appeared. It was not a human face. The being was tall and thin, with skin like polished metal and eyes that held no pupils. Behind it, Deho could see other aliens, different species, all of them. Some had scales, some had too many limbs, some seemed to be made of light itself, but they all wore the same symbol on their chests, a circle with 7 points. "I am High Commander Veleth of the Velkari Empire," the metal-skinned alien said. Its voice was flat, without emotion. "You are the species called human." Yuna stepped forward. "Yes, we're honored to make contact with. We have observed your expansion," Veleth interrupted. "You have spread to 37 star systems in less than 300 years. This is notable for a primitive species." Deho felt his jaw tighten. Beside him, Minho's hands curled into fists. Yuna kept her voice steady. "We don't consider ourselves primitive. But we're eager to learn from other civilizations and share our own knowledge." "Share." Veleth made a sound that might have been laughter. "You misunderstand. The Velkari Empire does not share. We assess, we classify. We assign." "Assign?" Yuna asked. "Your species has been assessed. You are physically resilient, adaptable to many environments, and capable of simple problem-solving. You will be classified as a labor caste and redistributed across Velkari worlds according to our needs." The bridge went silent. Deho stared at the screen, certain he had misheard. "You're talking about slavery," he said. Veleth's head tilted slightly. "I am talking about purpose. In the Velkari Empire, every species serves the collective. Individual will is irrelevant. Only the hierarchy matters. You will be given purpose. You should be grateful." Yuna raised her hands, her diplomatic training kicking in. "High Commander, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Humans are a sovereign species. We govern ourselves. We can't submit to external rule. But we can certainly discuss trade agreements, cultural exchange, mutual defense treaties. There is nothing to discuss." Veleth's voice remained flat. "You will submit to classification. Your leaders will report to our administrative vessels for processing. Any resistance will be met with corrective measures." Deho stepped forward. "And if we refuse?" For the first time, something like interest flickered in Veleth's empty eyes. "No species refuses, then we'll be the first." Veleth stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned to someone off-screen and spoke in a language the translator couldn't process. When he looked back, his expression hadn't changed, but something in his posture had shifted. "You require demonstration," Vela said. "This is expected from primitive species." On the screen, one of the Valkyrie ships broke formation. It turned toward New Bizan's orbital station, a civilian structure housing 300 people, scientists, families, children. "Wait," Yuna said, her voice suddenly desperate. "Wait, please," the Valkyrie ship fired. The orbital station vanished in a flash of light. 300 lives, gone in less than a second. On the bridge, someone screamed. Deho couldn't tell who. The sound seemed to come from very far away. "This is corrective measure," Vela said. "You will now submit to classification." Deho looked at the screen where the station had been. He thought about the people he knew there, Dr. Pak and his wife. The teacher, Miss Jeng, who had taught his nephew. The little girl who had waved at him last week when his ship passed by. Gone, all gone. "Lieutenant Minho," Daho said quietly. "Sir?" "Target the lead Valkyrie vessel. All weapons." Minho didn't hesitate. "Targeted, sir. Fire." The HFY's weapons were not designed for this. They were patrol guns meant to chase off pirates and smugglers. Against a Valkyrie warship, they should have been useless, but the Valkyrie weren't expecting resistance. No species had ever fought back against them. Their shields were down, their weapons unpowered. The HFY's missiles struck the lead ship's engines and tore them apart. The bridge erupted in chaos. Alarm screamed. Officers shouted orders. On the screen, Veleth's face showed something Deho had never expected to see: confusion. "All ships, engage." Deho commanded. "Target their weapons and engines. Make them pay for every shot." The 5 patrol ships of New Bizan threw themselves at 17 Valkyrie warships. It was suicide. They all knew it. But they attacked anyway, pouring fire into the enemy fleet with everything they had. The battle lasted 9 minutes. When it was over, 4 human ships were destroyed and the HFY was burning. But 2 Valkyrie cruisers were crippled, and a third was venting atmosphere. Deho sat in his command chair, bleeding from a gash on his forehead. Around him, his surviving crew worked frantically to keep the ship alive. On the screen, the Valkyrie fleet was regrouping, preparing to finish them off. "Minho," Deho said. "Open a channel to Earth, maximum power. Get through no matter what." Minho's hands flew across his console. "Channel open, sir." Deho looked into the camera. He thought about his family back on Earth, his mother, who still called him every week, his brother, who had just had a baby girl. He thought about all the humans across 37 star systems who didn't yet know that everything had changed. "This is Captain Park Deho of the New Bizan Defense Fleet. We have made contact with an alien empire called the Valkyrie. They demanded our surrender. When we refused, they destroyed our orbital station and killed 300 civilians." He paused, tasting blood in his mouth. "They just declared war on us. Make them regret it." He cut the transmission. The Valkyrie ships moved in, and the HFY shuddered under their fire. Deho gripped his armrests and watched the enemy approach. He didn't know if humanity would survive what was coming. But he knew one thing for certain: the Valkyrie had made a terrible mistake. They had come looking for slaves, and instead they had found something else entirely. They had found humans, and humans do not kneel. "Admiral." Beak Jasu stood before the strategic display, watching 5 red arrows push into human space. Each arrow represented a Valkyrie battle fleet. Each fleet contained over 1,000 warships. Together, they were the largest military force the Valkyrie had ever deployed against a single species. Their war analysts predicted total victory in 6 months. Jasu smiled. It was not a kind smile. She was 73 years old, with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun and eyes that had seen 3 wars. The soldiers called her the Iron Grandmother, and they meant it with respect. She had never lost a campaign. "They're dividing their forces," said Commander Ru Hajin, her chief strategist. "They're hitting 5 systems at once. They expect us to defend each one?" "Then we won't," Jasu said. Hajin looked at her. "Admiral? We cannot match them in direct combat. We have 800 ships against 5,000. If we meet them fleet to fleet, we die? Jisoo traced her finger along the display, following the enemy supply lines. So we don't meet them. We make them chase shadows. We bleed them one cut at a time. This was the birth of the Burning Veil strategy. Jisoo split the Terran fleet into dozens of small strike groups. They didn't attack Valkyrie battle fleets, they attacked everything else. Supply convoys, communication relays, repair stations, fuel depots. They struck fast, hit hard, and vanished before the enemy could respond. The Valkyrie had never faced tactics like this. In their wars, enemy fleets lined up and fought until one side was destroyed. The idea of refusing battle, of running away only to attack again somewhere else, it made no sense to them. It was cowardly. It was dishonorable. It was working. 3 months into the war, the Valkyrie advance had stalled. Their ships were running low on fuel. Their crews were exhausted from constant alerts. Their commanders were furious, but they couldn't find an enemy to fight. On the ground, things were even worse. Sergeant Otaisen had been a farmer before the war. He grew rice on Proxima Colony, same as his father and grandfather. When the Valkyrie came, he watched their soldiers march into his village and start sorting people. The young and healthy were loaded onto transports. The old and sick were simply shot. Tayson ran. He gathered everyone who could fight, farmers, teachers, shopkeepers, and took to the hills. They had hunting rifles and kitchen knives. The Valkyrie had plasma weapons and armored vehicles. It didn't matter. Tayson learned that the Valkyrie didn't understand ambush. They marched in neat columns, expecting enemies to stand and fight. When his people attacked from hidden positions and then disappeared, the aliens didn't know how to respond. They would waste hours searching the wrong area, while Tayson's group circled behind them and attacked again. He learned that Valkyrie officers always stayed at the center of their formations. Kill the officer, and the soldiers became confused and slow. He learned that their vehicles needed to refuel every 100 kilometers. Destroy the fuel, and the vehicles became useless metal boxes. Most importantly, he learned that the Valkyrie had never conquered a species that refused to stay conquered across human space. Resistance groups like Tayson sprang up on every occupied world. They called themselves different names: the Mountain Tigers, the Ghost Battalion, the Silent Ones, but they all fought the same way. They struck without warning. They showed no mercy. They turned every city, every forest, every cave into a death trap. The Valkyrie commanders reported back to their High Council with growing alarm. The humans would not surrender. Even when surrounded and outnumbered, they fought to the death. Some strapped explosives to their bodies and charged into enemy positions. Others poisoned their own water supplies rather than let the Valkyrie use them. The concept of insurgency didn't exist in Valkyrie military doctrine. They had to invent a new word for it, while soldiers fought and died. Dr. Shin Yoonji worked in a laboratory deep beneath the surface of Mars. She was a weapons researcher, head of the Special Projects Division, and she had been given one order: find a way to match Valkyrie technology, the first captured. Valkyrie ship arrived at her lab 3 weeks after New Bizon. It was badly damaged, but its systems were mostly intact. Yoonji and her team worked without sleep, taking it apart piece by piece, trying to understand how it worked. Valkyrie technology was advanced far beyond humanity's. Their shields could absorb 10 times more damage than Terran designs. Their weapons fired plasma that burned at temperatures humans couldn't measure. Their engines spent space in ways that human physicists said should be impossible, but technology could be learned. And humans learned fast. Within 2 months, Yoonji's team had reverse-engineered the Valkyrie shield generators. Within 3, they had improved them. The new Terran shields were actually stronger than the original's. Valkyrie engineering was elegant, but human engineering was aggressive. Where the Valkyrie built to last, humans built to win. The weapons took longer. Plasma technology required materials that didn't exist on human worlds. But Yoonji found alternatives. Kinetic weapons accelerated to a fraction of light speed. Missiles that could think and adapt. Bombs that folded space and reappeared inside enemy ships. The Valkyrie had spent millennia perfecting their weapons. Humans had 6 months in rage. Somehow, rage was enough. The turning point came at Andong Station. Admiral Beek Jisu had gathered 60 ships, everything she could spare, for a strike on a Valkyrie supply hub. But the enemy had set a trap. 200 warships emerged from hiding and surrounded the Terran fleet, pushing them against a dense asteroid belt. There was nowhere to run. The Valkyrie commander broadcast a simple message: surrender and you will be processed for labor assignment. Resist and you will be destroyed. Jisu looked at her tactical display. 60 ships against 200. Asteroids behind them, enemy weapons in front. No escape, no reinforcements, no hope. She opened a channel to her fleet. All ships, this is Admiral Beek. I will not lie to you. We cannot win this battle. Many of us will die here today. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was iron. But we can make them remember us. We can make them bleed. We can show them what it costs to fight humanity. All ships, full speed ahead. Target their flagship. We're going right down their throats. 60 Terran ships charged directly into 200 Valkyrie warships. The battle lasted less than an hour. When it ended, 43 human ships were destroyed. But so were 87 Valkyrie vessels, including their flagship and 3 irreplaceable dreadnoughts. The Valkyrie had lost almost half their fleet against an enemy a third their size. After the battle, a Valkyrie officer was captured. During interrogation, he asked only one question: why do you not fear death? The interrogator thought about it for a moment. Then she answered, we fear death, but we fear submission more. The officer did not understand. But his confusion was passed up the chain of command, analyzed by Valkyrie strategists, and eventually reported to the High Council itself. For the first time in their history, the Valkyrie began to wonder if they had made a mistake. On occupied worlds, humans continued to resist. In space, Terran ships continued to strike and fade and strike again. In laboratories, scientists continued to build better weapons. The war was not over. Far from it. The Valkyrie still had more ships, more soldiers, more resources, but they were no longer confident of victory. And across the galaxy, other species watched and whispered. The subject races who had served the Valkyrie for centuries, who had been told that resistance was impossible, they saw the humans fighting and wondered if these strange, stubborn creatures could defy the Empire. Maybe others could too. The Valkyrie had come to human space expecting easy conquest. Instead, they found something they had never encountered before. A species that would rather die than kneel. The galaxy was learning to fear humanity. And humanity was just getting started. The Valkyrie High Council met in emergency session for the first time in 300 years. 7 beings sat around a table of polished stone, each representing one of the Empire's founding species. They had ruled the galaxy for millennia. They had never faced a crisis like this. We have lost 23% of our invasion fleet, reported the war minister, a creature of living crystal whose body hummed with every word. Our supply lines are in chaos. Morale is collapsing. Against a species we classified as primitive labor stock, added another council member, her scales rippling with anger. This is impossible, and yet it is happening. The speaker was High Commander Velov, the same being who had destroyed New Bizan's orbital station 1 year ago. His metal skin showed new scars, damage from a battle he barely survived. The humans do not fight like any species we have encountered. They do not seek to defend territory. They do not negotiate. They only attack. Always attack. Then we will give them something they cannot attack, said the Council Prime, the oldest and most powerful of them. We will deploy the cleansing tide. Silence fell over the chamber. The cleansing tide was the Valkyrie's weapon of last resort. A biological agent that could be tuned to specific genetic codes. Once released on a world, it would kill every member of the target species within hours. It had only been used twice in Valkyrie history, both times to exterminate species that posed existential threats. If we use this weapon, Vela said slowly, every other species in the Empire will see. They will know what we are willing to do. They will know that we are willing to do what is necessary. the Council Prime replied. Prepare the cleansing tide, target all human-occupied worlds. This war ends now. 8,000 light-years away. Agent Quan Sujin received this intelligence and felt her blood turn to ice. She had been embedded in Valkyrie space for 6 months, posing as a servant species called the Delamari. Her scales were fake, her gills were prosthetic, and her life depended on no one looking too closely. She worked in an administrative center, processing supply requests, invisible and ignored, but invisible people hear things. And Sujin had heard about the cleansing tide. She sat in her tiny quarters staring at her communication device. If she sent a transmission to Earth, the Valkyrie would detect it. They would trace it to her location. They would kill her slowly to extract information. She thought about her family. Her mother, who sent her recipes and coded messages. Her younger brother, who had just been promoted to lieutenant in the fleet. She thought about the life she would never have, the husband, the children, the quiet retirement on some peaceful colony. Then she thought about 14 billion humans who would die if she stayed silent. She activated the transmitter and began to speak. This is Agent Quan Sojin, Terran Intelligence, operating under deep cover in Valkyrie Administrative Sector 7. I have confirmed intelligence regarding an imminent threat to all human-occupied worlds. She transmitted the technical data, the weapon specifications, the deployment timeline, the target list. The Valkyrie intend to exterminate us. There is no more time for defense. We must strike first. She paused, knowing these would be her last words. Don't mourn me, she said. Burn them all. She cut the transmission. Within minutes, she heard boots in the hallway. She had time to destroy her equipment and swallow her suicide pill before they reached her door. Agent Quan Sujin died standing up on Earth. Counselor M. Dong-Yun received her transmission and knew what had to be done. He was not a military man. He had spent his career in politics, building coalitions, finding compromises. He believed in peace, in negotiation, in finding common ground with enemies. But there was no common ground with a species planning genocide. He stood before the Terran Federation Assembly, 500 representatives from every human world. They watched him with desperate eyes, waiting for answers he didn't have. My fellow humans, he said, I have spent my life believing that all conflicts can be resolved through dialogue. I was wrong. He displayed Sujin's intelligence on the main screen. The weapon specifications. The deployment plan. The list of target worlds, every colony, every station, every place where humans lived. The Valkyrie intend to kill us all. Not defeat us. Not conquer us. Exterminate us. Every man, woman, and child. His voice broke slightly and he let it. We have one choice. We can wait for them to deploy this weapon and die begging for mercy they will never give. Or we can strike first. Strike hard. Show them that the cost of destroying humanity is the destruction of their empire. He looked around the chamber. He saw fear, grief, rage. He saw representatives clutching images of their families. He saw a species facing extinction. I move that we authorize total war against the Valkyrie Empire. All targets. All weapons. No limits. He took a breath. And may God forgive us for what we're about to do. The vote was unanimous. Commander Ru Hajin had been preparing for this moment. For 6 months, the Ghost Fleet was his. Creation 20 ships equipped with experimental weapons and captured Valkyrie stealth technology. They could slip through enemy space undetected, strike without warning, and disappear before anyone knew they were there. They were the sharpest blade humanity possessed, now that blade was being drawn. Hajin stood before his captains in the briefing room of his flagship, the Silent Thunder. They were the best officers in the fleet, and they all knew they might not survive this mission. Our targets are distributed across 17 Valkyrie systems, Hajin said, displaying the attack plan. Military installations, shipyards, industrial centers. We hit them all simultaneously. We show the Valkyrie that nowhere is safe, that we can reach them anywhere, anytime. Captain Yang Nasuk raised her hand. Sir, some of these targets are in densely populated areas. Civilian casualties could be significant. Hajin closed his eyes for a moment. He had asked himself this question 1,000 times. He still didn't have a good answer. The Valkyrie are planning to kill 14 billion of our people, he said. If we do nothing, humanity dies? If we hold back, humanity dies? The only way we survive is to make the Valkyrie fear us more than they want to destroy us. He looked at her, and his voice was heavy. I know what we're about to do. I know we'll have to live with it. But our children will live. That's enough. The Ghost Fleet launched. They moved through Valkyrie space like shadows, unseen and unheard. For 3 weeks, they gathered intelligence, identified weak points, and positioned themselves for the strike. The Valkyrie never knew they were there. The attack came without warning, 17 installations destroyed in a single hour. Shipyards that had built warships for centuries reduced to burning wreckage. Military command centers vaporized. The orbital ring of the Valkyrie industrial capital, a structure that had taken 1,000 years to build, shattered into 1 billion pieces. Millions died. Hajin watched the destruction from his bridge, his face empty of expression. Around him, his crew sat in silence. No one celebrated. No one cheered. They had just committed an act of mass killing, and they knew it, but they also knew what would happen if they hadn't. When the attack was complete, Hajin recorded a message for the Valkyrie leadership. His voice was calm, but his eyes were hard. You wanted to know what humans are capable of, he said. Now you know. You plan to exterminate us. Instead, you've shown us exactly how far we're willing to go. Every world you possess is within our reach. Every city, every station, every colony. Surrender, and this ends. Refuse, and we will visit this upon every world you possess until there is nothing left. He paused. You declared war on the most lethal species alive. Congratulations. You're about to find out why. The Valkyrie did not surrender, but for the first time in their long history, they understood fear. They understood that they were no longer the hunters, they were the prey, and the humans were just getting started. 18 months into the war, both sides were dying. The Valkyrie had lost 40% of their fleet and 1/3 of their industrial capacity. But they still had more ships than humanity. They still had more soldiers, more resources, more worlds. They could rebuild. They could outlast. Humanity was bleeding faster. The colony of Jeju Prime had fallen. So had Gwangju Station and the mining settlements of the Outer Belt. 12 million humans were dead, with millions more under Valkyrie occupation. The Terran fleet was down to 400 ships, barely enough to defend the core worlds. We're losing, Admiral Beek-Jasu said bluntly. She stood in the war room on Earth, surrounded by holographic displays showing a shrinking sphere of human-controlled space. We've hurt them badly, but we can't finish them. We don't have the numbers. Then we need more numbers, said Ambassador Lee Nari. Everyone turned to look at her. She was young for her position, barely 40, but she had a sharp mind and sharper instincts. She had spent months studying Valkyrie society, learning their history, their structure, their weaknesses. The Valkyrie Empire isn't one species, Nari continued. It's 7 founding species and hundreds of subject races. Most of those subjects have been enslaved for centuries. They hate their masters. You want to start rebellions, Jasu said. I want to offer freedom. In exchange for alliance. Nari pulled up a display showing the Valkyrie Empire. These species have been told all their lives that resistance is impossible. We're proof that it's not. If we can reach them, if we can convince them to fight, the Valkyrie will slaughter them, interrupted Counselor An Dong-yun. The moment they rise up, the Empire will crush them. They're already being slaughtered, Nari said quietly. The Valkyrie work them to death, experiment on them, use them as cannon fodder. They have nothing to lose. She looked around the room. And neither do we. There was a long silence. Then Admiral Beek-Jasu nodded. Do it, she said. Ambassador Lee Nari left Earth with a small ship and a dangerous mission. She would travel to 12 worlds deep in Valkyrie space, meet with species who had never known freedom, and try to convince them to die for a chance at it. Her first stop was a water world called Dilema, home to the aquatic Delamari. They had been Valkyrie subjects for 3,000 years, serving as laborers and servants across the Empire. They were considered docile, obedient, easily controlled. Nari knew better. She had read the classified reports about Agent Quan Sujin, who had posed as a Delamari for 6 months without anyone questioning her presence. That meant the Delamari were everywhere in Valkyrie society. They saw everything. She met with their council in an underwater chamber, surrounded by beings with silver scales and wide black eyes. They listened as she explained who she was and why she had come. The Valkyrie are losing this war, Nari said. They won't admit it, but they're running out of ships, out of soldiers, out of time. Humanity is proving that the Empire can be fought, that it can be beaten. And if we help you, the Delamari elder said, and you lose, the Valkyrie will punish us for 1,000 years. If we lose, the Valkyrie will exterminate humanity, all of us, and then they'll turn on every species that showed sympathy toward us. You'll be punished either way. Nari leaned forward. But if we win, you'll be free. For the first time in 3,000 years, you'll control your own destiny. The Delamari did not commit immediately, but they listened. And when Nari left their world, she saw something in their eyes that hadn't been there before. Hope. She visited the Kareth next insectoid, beings who worked in Valkyrie factories. Then the Voss, crystalline creatures who served as navigators on Valkyrie ships. Then a dozen other species, large and small, powerful and weak, all united by one thing. They hated their masters. Not all of them agreed to help. Some were too afraid. Some didn't believe the Valkyrie could be beaten. But many did. And those who did agreed to do everything they could to undermine the Empire from within. The Kareth stopped working. They claimed disease, exhaustion, confusion, anything to slow production. Valkyrie factories that had operated for centuries ground to a halt. The Delamari began making mistakes. Supply orders went to the wrong systems. Troop deployments were delayed. Communication networks developed mysterious problems that no one could fix. The Voss provided intelligence. Fleet movements, weapon shipments, defensive positions, everything they saw on Valkyrie ships, they reported to human handlers. The Ghost Fleet used this information to strike with devastating precision. The Valkyrie Empire was being eaten from the inside, but it wasn't enough. On Earth. Engineer Han Kyung-ho completed his life's work and wished he hadn't. Project Sunrise was a weapon that could destabilize stars. It worked by creating an artificial resonance in a star's core, causing a chain reaction that would tear the star apart. The resulting explosion would destroy everything in the system planets. Stations, fleets, people. It was the most powerful weapon ever built. And Kyung-ho hated it. We can't use this, he said to the military committee. Do you understand what I've created? This isn't a bomb. This is the ability to commit genocide. We fire this at a Valkyrie system, and every living thing in that system dies, civilians, children, subject species who are already on our side. The Valkyrie are planning to use the cleansing tide against us, replied General Song Woo-jin, commander of Terran ground forces. They're going to kill every human in existence. Project Sunrise is our only way to make them stop. By threatening to kill every Valkyrie in existence? That makes us no different from them. We are different, Woo-jin said sharply. We didn't start this war. We didn't enslave half the galaxy. We didn't plan to exterminate a species because they refused to kneel. We are fighting to survive. Everything we've done, everything has been to survive. Kyung-ho looked at him with tired eyes. I know why we're doing this. I just wonder if we'll still be human when it's over. The debate about Project Sunrise consumed the Federation Assembly for days. Some argued for immediate use. Some argued for destruction of the weapon. Some argued for using it as a threat without ever intending to deploy it. The argument was interrupted by news from the front. The Valkyrie had deployed the cleansing tide. The target was Incheon Prime, a colony of 14 million people. The weapon was delivered by a single ship that bypassed all defenses. By the time anyone realized what was happening, it was too late. the plague spread through the atmosphere in hours. It attacked human DNA with surgical precision, breaking down cells from the inside. There was no cure, no treatment, no hope. 14 million people died in agony over the course of 3 days when the last transmissions came in from Inchen Prime. The screams, the prayers, the final goodbyes, the assembly fell silent. Representatives wept openly. Some collapsed in their seats. Councillor M. Dong-yoon stood at the podium, his face gray with shock and grief. "They have shown us what they are," he said finally, his voice hollow. "Now we must decide what we are." The vote on Project Sunrise was called that night. It passed unanimously. General Song Woojin, who had argued so forcefully for the weapon, was the last to cast his vote. His hand trembled as he pressed the button. "God forgive us," he whispered. "God forgive us all." In her quarters, Ambassador Lee Nari watched the vote and thought about the species she had visited. The Delamari, who had risked everything to help humanity. The Karath, who had stopped working in the hope of freedom. The Voss, who had betrayed their masters. Because humans had shown them it was possible, they were all counting on humanity to be better than the Valkyrie. To prove that freedom was worth fighting for. Because free people did not commit atrocities. And now humanity had a weapon that could destroy stars. Nari closed her eyes and hoped they would never use it, but she knew they would. The question was when and how many would die when they did. The Allied fleet gathered at the edge of the Valkyrie home system. 3,000 ships from a dozen species Terran cruisers alongside Karath carriers, Delamari destroyers next to Voss scouts. It was the largest armada in galactic history, and it had come for one purpose, to end the war. Admiral Beek Jasu stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Indomitable, and looked at the display showing the enemy system. 12 planets, hundreds of stations, billions of Valkyrie citizens. The heart of an empire that had ruled the galaxy for millennia, and somewhere in that system, the weapon that would destroy it all. Project Sunrise had been modified since. Incheon Prime, engineer Han Kyung-ho had worked without sleep for weeks, refining the technology, adding new capabilities. The weapon could still destroy stars, but now it could also send a warning. A brief, controlled destabilization that would be visible across the entire empire. A demonstration of what humanity could do without actually doing it. "It's your choice," Kyung-ho had told Jasu before she left. "You can end them, or you can show them you could end them and give them a chance to surrender. Either way, the weapon is ready." Jasu had not told him which option she would choose. She wasn't sure herself. Admiral Commander Ru Hajin appeared at her side. His ghost fleet had been folded into the main armada, their days of operating alone finally over. "All ships report ready. The Allied commanders are waiting for your orders." Jasu nodded slowly. She had been a soldier for 50 years. She had fought in wars, lost friends, made decisions that killed thousands. But she had never held the power to destroy a civilization. "Signal the Delamari flagship," she said. "And the Karath. I want to speak with the Allied commanders before we proceed." The conference took place via hologram, 12 beings appearing on the Indomitable's bridge. They represented species that had been enemies a year ago, slaves 2 years ago. Now they stood together, united by a common cause. "The weapon is ready," Jasu told them. "We can use it as a demonstration, show the Valkyrie what we can do without destroying their star. Or we can use it at full power and end them completely." "They killed 14 million of your people on Incheon Prime," the Karath commander said, his mandibles clicking. "They have enslaved us for centuries. They deserve destruction." "Perhaps," said the Delamari elder. "But if we destroy them, we become what they were. We become conquerors, killers. We prove that power is the only thing that matters." "Power is the only thing that matters," the Karath replied. "That is the lesson of history. Then we must teach a new lesson." The voice came from an unexpected source, the Voss Navigator, a being of living crystal who had said almost nothing in previous meetings. "Humans showed us that resistance was possible. If they now show that mercy is possible, that victory does not require extermination, then perhaps the galaxy can become something better than it was." Jasoo listened to them argue, weighing their words. Then she made her decision. We use the demonstration, she said. We show them what we can do, and we give them one chance to surrender. The Kareth commander's eyes flashed with anger. And if they refuse? Then we do what we must. Jasoo's voice was hard. But we give them the chance first. We prove that we're better than they are. Otherwise, what are we fighting for? The Allied fleet moved into the Valkyrie home system. They were met by every ship the Empire had left, over 2,000 vessels, battered and worn but still deadly. The two armadas faced each other across 1,000,000 kilometers of space, weapons armed, crews ready, on the indomitable Dr. Kim Yuna prepared to send a message. She had come a long way from New Bison, where she had tried to establish first contact and watched her station destroyed. She had seen the war from beginning to end. Now she would try, one last time, to end it with words. Open a channel, she said. All frequencies. I want every Valkyrie in this system to hear this. Her face appeared on screens across the enemy fleet and on the planet below. In homes and offices and military bases. This is Dr. Kim Yuna of the United Terran Federation. 2 years ago, your High Commander told us that individual will was irrelevant, that only the collective mattered. He said we would be given purpose and should be grateful. She paused, letting the words sink in. You were wrong. Individual will is the only thing that matters. It's why we fought when we should have surrendered. It's why we kept fighting when we should have died. It's why we're here now, at the heart of your empire, with the power to end your civilization. She took a breath. We are not going to use that power. Because we are not you. Here are our terms. Release all subject species. Withdraw from all occupied territories. Accept the formation of a galactic council where every species has equal voice. Do this and the war ends. Refuse and we will do what we must to protect ourselves and our allies. She leaned forward. You have 1 day. She cut the transmission for 23 hours. The fleet waited. Captain Park Daeho stood on the bridge of his new ship, a dreadnought named New Bison, in honor of the colony where the war began. He had survived the first battle barely and spent 6 months recovering from his injuries. Now he was back and he wanted blood. We should attack now, he said over the command channel. Every hour we wait gives them time to prepare, time to plan, time to find a way to kill us. We gave them a day, Admiral Beak replied. We keep our word, our word. Daeho's voice was bitter. They killed my crew. They killed 300 people on our station. They killed 14 million on Incheon Prime, and we're giving them our word. Yes, Jasoo said simply, because that's what makes us different. Daeho fell silent, but his hands gripped his armrests until his knuckles turned white. 23 hours passed. Then 24. Then 25? They're not responding, Hajin reported. No communications, no movement, nothing. Jasoo felt her heart sink. She had hoped against all evidence, against all logic, that the Valkyrie would see reason, that they would choose survival over pride. Prepare to activate Project Sunrise, she said quietly. Full power, Admiral. Yuna's voice was tight. Incoming transmission from the Valkyrie homeworld. It's High Commander Veleth. The screen flickered and Veleth's face appeared. He looked older than he had 2 years ago. His metal skin was dull, his eyes tired. Behind him, Jasoo could see other Valkyrie commanders watching. We have heard your terms, Veleth said. His voice was flat, emotionless, exactly as it had been at New Bison. We have debated them for many hours. There are those who wish to fight to the end, to destroy you even if it means our own destruction. He paused, but there are also those who have studied your species, who have seen what you do when cornered, who understand that you will never stop, never surrender, never accept defeat. Another pause. We have ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years. We have never lost a war. We have never submitted to another species. He looked directly at the screen, and for the first time, Jasoo saw something in his eyes that she had never expected: exhaustion. Enough, he said. The bridge of the Indomitable erupted. Officers shouted, embraced, wept. On other ships across the fleet, similar scenes played out, humans and aliens celebrating together. Enemies become friends in the space of a single word. Jisoo stood still, watching the chaos around her. She thought about all the people who had died to reach this moment. The crew of New Bizan, the soldiers at Andong Station, Agent Kwon Sojin. The 14 million on Incheon Prime. She thought about Captain Park Dae-ho, who had fired the first shot of the war and wanted so badly to fire the last. She thought about Dr. Kim Yuna, who had tried to make peace and watched everything fall apart, and then tried again anyway. She thought about humanity, stubborn, angry, frightened. Determined humanity who had looked at an impossible enemy and refused to kneel. "It's over," Hajin said softly, standing beside her. "We won." Jisoo shook her head. "No, we survived." "That's not the same thing." But it was enough. In the years that followed, the galaxy transformed. The Valkyrie Empire dissolved. Subject species built their own nations, their own futures. The Galactic Council became the first true representative government in history. With every species, including the Valkyrie, given equal voice, humanity earned a new reputation. Not as the most violent species, though they were. Not as the most dangerous, though they were that too. They became known as the species that could have destroyed their enemies and chose not to. The species that valued freedom more than vengeance. The species that proved mercy was possible even after everything they had suffered. On New Bizan rebuilt, thriving, home to 100,000 people, a memorial stood in the central plaza. It listed the names of everyone who died in the orbital station attack. The first casualties of the war. And beneath the names, an inscription. They thought they were declaring war on a weak species. They were declaring war on the most lethal species alive, not because we are strongest, but because we will never, ever stop. Captain Park Dae-ho visited the memorial every year on the anniversary of the attack. He would stand there for hours, reading the names, remembering the faces. He had wanted to destroy the Valkyrie. He had wanted revenge, fire, blood. He had argued for it until the very end, but standing there, looking at the names of the dead and the city of the living rising around him, he understood something he hadn't before. Victory wasn't about destroying your enemies. Victory was about building something worth fighting for, and humanity had done that. Against all odds. Against an empire that had ruled the stars for 10,000 years. Against enemies who saw them as nothing more than labor stock. Humanity had survived, and the galaxy would never forget it.